skills, knowledge, abilities that you need to possess, that you need to bring to the team to be a good team member. And today we're going to talk about how you put all that together to have a successful team. So, very much like we said last week, while there's no I in team, the truth of the matter is there really is. Teams are made up of individuals that work together to create a specific team, but the individual is a small part of the whole. So it's kind of an issue of the sum being greater than the individual parts, or at least that's what successful teams look like. So, pointing out again that there still is an individual effect. Any team is only as strong as the weakest team member. I know you've heard that before, but the truth of the matter is that sets the bar for your team's performance. So it is important that people individually focus on continuing to learn, grow, and develop as team members. Working well together, as I said earlier, can enable us to do far more than any of us could do personally, specifically, and individually. That's the whole point of having a team, is that the collaborative effort can accomplish more than individual efforts can. But there's some tricks to that. Team success requires, first of all, both positivity and productivity. So what do you think we mean by positivity? The team needs positivity.
Someone that's not being manipulative.
Okay, someone who's not being manipulative, someone who has a good attitude, is positive, energetic, optimistic about what the team can do, invested in the team's success. Yes?
I know one of the things I learned in a previous job was just positive intent.
Yeah.
So just someone who, when you can just not always think the bad, is going to happen. You can just say, maybe they didn't mean it like that.
Good point. Yeah. So do you have a positive spin on things or a negative spin on things? And in fact, I had this conversation yesterday in a supervision session with one of the therapists when we were talking about a client who's prone to imagine the worst. And so one of the interventions was, well, maybe help her see that imagining outcomes is not a prediction particularly, and if you imagine negative, what does that do to you internally? If you imagine catastrophe and disaster and the worst possible outcome, how easy is it for you to stay positive about what you're doing? Not very. So if you imagine the best, case scenario instead of the worst, it tends to help you maintain your energy, your optimism, your investment in what you're doing. So expecting success instead of expecting disaster does have an effect on how you do your work. When we talk about team productivity, what are we talking about?
I believe acknowledging the strengths of each team member.
Good,
so
yeah.
you can capitalize on what you guys do well to work better as a team. Good.
So productivity has to do with recognizing what each of us does well and letting people do what they're good at. So productivity is enhanced when everybody gets to do the job they're best at. We talked about that last week. Yeah.
I also think understanding what's expected and being able to go after it as intentionally as you can.
Excellent.
I think that's important.
And we're going to be saying more about that, so hold on to that
Okay.
thought. But I want to show you a graph next that shows about the connection between productivity and positivity. Let's start with low productivity, low positivity. In teams that are characterized by low productivity, they don't do much, they don't get much done, and they're not very positive. They are prone to be very negative, very critical. Those teams are not much fun to be a part of. There's a lot of cynicism, there's an atmosphere of criticism and blame. People usually feel overwhelmed and sort of defeated before they even get going. They are anxious, fearful, critical, expect bad things to happen. They tend to be very reactive in the moment, but don't have much long-term vision. So basically, They only get work done when there's a crisis in front of them. And how much fun is it to be a crisis-focused team? It's not much fun. So these teams, people typically do not enjoy being a part of, and they don't get much done. These are the kinds of teams where everybody's looking for an out. Everybody's looking for somebody else's team to be a part of. And they don't work together well. Back to what Joya was saying, they don't capitalize on strengths. They don't seem to have any sense of collaboration and knowing how to capitalize on one another's strengths. Okay, so let's look at low productivity but high positivity. These are the social group teams. Everybody loves meeting at Starbucks, and they have a great time hanging out together, but not much is happening. Wow. And you're giggling. I know you've all been a part of teams like that, where everybody liked being a part of this team, but at the end of the day, there wasn't much work getting done. Yeah. So these are the teams that sort of deteriorate into coffee clutches or social groups. And it is true that people often use the workplace to look for social relationships. Many people feel too busy to have friends outside work. But if you don't have some balance between friendship and professionalism, you can very easily end up being part of a team that's having a great time coming to work, but the mission is not being met. Okay, let's look at what happens when you have low positivity, but you get a lot of work done. Basically, those are teams that don't focus on relationship at all. They've got just the reverse problem of this group. People are constantly feeling like they're having to grind out work and that they're never getting enough done. They don't feel very gratified by being a part of these teams, even though these may be very, very efficient and productive teams. This is a formula for burnout. If you're working a lot, getting a lot done, but not getting emotional and social needs met, you can't keep that up. And so if there's low positivity but high productivity, that is a formula for problems with retention and recruitment. There's usually high turnover on these teams. There's a lot of burnout and compassion fatigue. They have clear objectives about what they're doing together, and they have kind of a get or done approach. But these teams can be highly competitive, and people sort of feel like they have to watch their back. So again, tend to have just the opposite problem of the team that's got high positivity but not getting much done. Okay, let's look at when you've got high productivity and high positivity. These are the teams everybody wants to be a part of. People are having a good time, they're viewed as successful, things are getting done, they're meeting their mission, people are feeling challenged, but they're feeling like the challenges are achievable. There's open communication, people are capitalizing on one another's strengths, there's a high level of cooperation and collaboration, and these are the teams that people say, man, that's an example of great teamwork. So these are the kinds of teams we're all striving for. So what does it take for a team to maintain high positivity and high productivity? That's really what we're going to be talking about today. What's involved in that? So we're going to break it down and look at some of the components of these successful teams. This has already been mentioned, I think Michael said this, but successful work teams have clear goals. They have a leader that supports and coaches team members, and we'll talk more about that later. They have adequate resources to do what they're charged with doing. They have good communication, sufficient rewards. People feel valued in being a part of these teams. They feel like their work matters. The work's well defined, it's fairly distributed, so that people who are most suited to a task tend to get those assignments. And if you've ever been a team leader, you know that that's really a critical component of good teamwork, is making sure the right people get the right jobs. David Jordan talks a lot at Agape about having the right people on the bus in the right seats. And that's really what you're looking for as a team leader. So you want the people who are suited by ability and enjoyment, the meaning they attach, whether or not they feel like they've been called to do this. those are the people that you want assigned to those particular tasks, so that everybody basically gets to do a lot of what they want to do when they came to work with this organization and with this team. So the more you can create a match between what people want to do and what they get to do, usually the better they perform. And that's not to say that everybody's job is always comprised entirely of things that you enjoy. Every job here has some elements that you kind of wish weren't part of the job description, or you don't feel like are as rewarding, enjoyable. But the trick is, how do we minimize those requirements and maximize the things that people really feel like fuels their enthusiasm and their desire to be here. So, 3 primary keys to high team performance are trust, support, and respect. If those elements are missing, your team is dead in the water. And so when we go back to individual components of team functioning, if you don't trust your team members, if you don't support your team members, if you don't respect your team members, and you don't feel trusted, supported, or respected by them, you don't have a team. You got a collection of people put together in the same space, but it's not a team. So trust is the critical element, and that is the foundation of all good teamwork. Trust, I liked Patrick Lencioni's comments about trust, and I've quoted him a lot in this presentation. He says that high-functioning teams require a foundation of trust that allows team members to engage in constructive conflict. If I don't trust you, I can't have a different opinion than you do, because I worry about how you're going to judge me, or how you're going to respond to me, or what kind of negative consequence could result of my letting you know that I don't think the same way or feel the same way. And if we don't have constructive conflict, then the team cannot become a high-functioning team. We won't have the level of commitment to diversity, commitment to one another, even when we disagree. We won't tolerate accountability, because I don't want anybody else to know what I think or feel or what I'm doing. And so it makes it really difficult for teams to achieve their goals. It makes it difficult for people to work together, makes it difficult for the team to work collaboratively. So trust really is fundamental. So when we say trust, one of my mentors really disliked the word trust, because it's one of those words that we throw around a lot, sort of like love, and everybody assumes we know what we're talking about, but people rarely are talking about the same thing. And so my mentor's favorite question was, trust for what? Trust for what? You trust me for what? And so here's some of the things we need to be able to trust one another for. I need to be able to trust, you need to be able to trust that you and I, when we're on the same team, are both capable of doing the job we're given on that team. So we have to have trust in one another's ability and capacity. We have to have trust in one another's commitment. I have to believe, and you have to believe, that each of us cares about whether or not the team succeeds. That each of us cares how good a job this team does. We have to trust one another's connection. I have to believe that you're invested enough in my success that if I get in a jam, you're going to help me. You have to believe the same of me, that I care enough about you, specifically and personally, that if you get in a jam, I'm going to be there. If you drop the ball, I'm going to catch it. So in well-functioning teams, when one person is overwhelmed or makes an error or isn't able to do what they normally do, the rest of the team is not standing there watching. Somebody's after that loose ball. Somebody's going for that rebound. Somebody's putting another layup up. So do you have each other's back is a component of trust. Commonality. Are we trying to accomplish the same thing? And that's a conversation. It's very important. Back to that clarity of role and mission. Do we know what we're doing and who's contributing what to getting it done? So is there clarity about what we're doing sufficiently that we feel on the same page? Okay, I know where we're going. I know who's in what seat on the bus. I know who's got what role. I know who's got it. I'm good to go. Consistency. We need to be able to depend on one another being the same person every time we show up. So consistency is important. Consistency is very important. It's very underappreciated until you lose it. Then you quickly learn how important it is. So consistency in showing up, consistency in attitude, behavior, performance, capacity, connection, commitment. I'm going to give you the same thing today I gave you yesterday. I'm going to give you the same thing tomorrow I'm giving you today. And then character, which goes along with consistency. Those are very, very closely related. Am I going to be the kind of person people want on their team? Am I going to manifest the team values? Am I going to uphold those values and be the sort of person that those values are evident in? So, am I going to be respectful, trusting and trustworthy, supportive, and connected to my team members? So character is a huge component of trust as well. So when people say, what do you mean by trust? There's some elements you can talk about that are critical to team functioning. Okay, teams need leadership, direction, coaching, mentoring, and coach is one of the most critical roles for a team leader. Teams don't just come together left to their own devices. It just doesn't happen. They need coaching, they need direction, they need support and assistance. And so this kind of support involves keeping an eye on team members, showing that you're willing to help them, fostering an environment of support, trust, and helping one another. That's a leadership function. Basically, it's the team equivalent of creating a corporate culture. What the leaders communicate they're about is what the team will believe they're about. So you want to create a culture where people are watching out for one another. They've got each other's backs. They're helping and supporting and assisting one another. They're not getting preoccupied